So first of all, I want to say welcome and thank you for coming. We know that May is a very busy time, very impacted schedule. All of you have an impacted schedule at the schools and wrapping up the school year. So just want to say thank you. I'm Christine Wang, and I'm in the Community Connections Division, which is basically I'm the school and community liaison for CHC. So we work with a lot of schools, meet with a lot of school counselors, and other special school teams. So I just want to briefly breeze through a couple of just some background about CHC. Are people familiar with CHC? Do people know? Okay, all right, great. So everyone knows that we're a nonprofit, that we're celebrating our 65th year, and we are a community-based organization. We do a lot of evaluation and treatment. And just recently, last year, we expanded our adolescent clinic. So we offer a lot of counseling services now for adolescents up to age 25. And is that right, 25? And then we also added an intensive outpatient program for high school youth as well. And that's for students who have moderate to high risk depression. And so if you're interested, there's some information that's on your desk, on your chair, sorry. A couple of things. So our mission is to remove barriers to learning. We really believe in the whole child here. That includes social emotional learning. In addition to academics, we've got knowing how to learn, physical, social, emotional, mental health. Wellness is very important to us. So that is this piece. And these are our 4 areas of expertise: ADHD, learning differences, anxiety, depression, and autism. We are known to be able to put together, especially, I want to say we specialize really in we can handle some pretty complex cases because we can put together a multidisciplinary team here because the upstairs is pretty much all clinic. And so that's something that's unique about us. And here are different divisions. We have our clinical services, which is all upstairs. We've got our community connections, which is where I work with many schools. We have Sandhill School, which is an independent school for students who have learning differences and or ADHD. And then we have the Esther B. Clark School, which is the therapeutic day school for kids who have behavioral and emotional challenges. Okay. LGBTQ safe. Here are some upcoming classes. Next week we have the challenges of anxiety, and we have a teen wellness committee, high school students who represent probably 12 schools in the immediate area, and we have about 4 or 5 students who will be here on a panel with our clinicians next week to talk about anxiety and how you can support your child. And then we also have, and Jenna will be part of that one, the LGBTQ teens and depression, which is a very high-risk group when we are looking at depression. Okay. And if you can fill out those cards, I've already collected quite a few. At the end of this, each of them are going to have a chance to talk, and we'll talk about the agenda. And then people will have a chance to ask questions. I'll also look at some of the questions and some of the thoughts and comments that you shared and read some of those out. So, okay.
Christine's going to come around and grab the rest that I wasn't able to get for the cards. But I'm Jenna Borrelli, and I'm a teen therapist here at CHC. I've been here about 2 years, and I primarily work with middle school, high school, and young adults and their families that are struggling with anxiety, depression, suicidality. So that's me.
Can everybody hear me? Is my mic? Okay, great. I'm Terese Brennan-Marquez, and I'm the Director of Counseling and Social Emotional Learning at Castilleja School, which is an all-girls 6th through 12th grade school in Palo Alto. I also have a private practice in Palo Alto. My favorite people to work with are teenagers and their parents, because I really think it truly is. I really think that this is a phenomenal time to have a lot of impact and to learn a lot of self-compassion. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about that later.
I'm Tiffany Chao. I am the Dean of Students at the Girls Middle School, which is, yes, a girls' middle school, also in Palo Alto. This is my 5th year there, and I've been in girls' schools now for 8 years. Other than thinking boys are the worst at everything anyway, it's such a privilege to be working with girls and only girls, because it's such a wonderful time, I think, to be female and to really be discovering the power that they have in our world. So we're just going to get started? Or
Yeah, let's roll it. So our agenda is laid out behind us.
Yep.
We're going to talk about the middle school student first, then high school, and then I'm going to talk about trends and challenges that I see in therapy with the clients I see, and dynamics between parent-child. And then we're going to do some role plays, and then get to question and answer.
When we sat down to discuss what we were going to talk about tonight, we thought it was really important to be very explicit, starting out by acknowledging that everyone in the room is coming with their own experience and their own story. So the mom sitting next to you, the daughter sitting next to you, her best friend, her worst enemy, everyone has had a different set of experiences. And so the things that we're talking about, the themes are going to be similar from person to person, but how they play out, what is actually said and what is actually done, might look very different from family to family and interaction to interaction. So I think it's really important, I think we all agree, that we're not here to say, here's what you do in this situation. It's more sharing the knowledge that we have and you taking it for your own family, because you know your family best and what to do for each other.
And I think at the end, too, if you have specific questions or scenarios, we'll be happy to weigh in on that,
Yeah.
too.
So I'm going to stand here because I can't see paper with my glasses this close, so I can take a look at this. That's why I'm over here. When we were talking about putting this together, the thing that I felt was so important that often gets missed in a talk like this is your developmental process as parents. So there's a lot of talk about this is a normal teenager, this is when you get worried, this is what it looks like. But I don't know how many of you have been to a talk, this is a normal teenage mother, this is when to get concerned, this is a normal teenage father. I mean father of a teenager, mother of a teenager. That's what I meant. And I'm especially excited that there are some young people in the room, because I want them to hear this too, so that you can hold your parent to the standard that I'm going to be talking about, because it is your job to be doing something right now, and it is and this room is all mothers, it looks like. It is your mother's job to be doing something really specific. So it seemed like it was so quick to go from infancy to 12 or 13 years old. It went in a flash, and you were just getting comfortable with being a parent when it was over. And now your role as a parent is going to change very drastically for a couple of reasons. One reason is that in this culture, most kids leave home somewhere around 18 years old. Sometimes they go till 20 to be independent. So if you think about it, those first 0 to 12 years, you had forming this human being who adored you for the most part. That human being has to leave you in 6 years, and you have to let them go. And so really your developmental task as a parent is to figure out how you are going to let them go and feel okay about them going out in the world. And that requires you doing something differently than as a parent. You need them to start making some of the decisions. You need them to, just like they were climbing on the jungle gym and you let them fall, not from too high, but from down here, so that they could learn how to climb on the jungle gym, you have to let them fall. And your job is to figure out what things you're going to let them fall on and what things feel too dangerous. There is a trend in parenting right now where we are, and I see this all the time, where we are holding our children a little too much. We need to let them go and we need to let them make some mistakes, and that's what's going to build resilience and knowledge for them. So that's why I say you need to shift from being a director to a consultant. And that is a really tough shift to make because your teenager has a teenage brain, and you know everything. You know that in a teenage brain, which I'm not going to go over in great detail, there is a lot of developing that is happening. And actually, I think the reason CHC sees kids till 25 years old in their teen clinic is because they know the prefrontal cortex of the brain is not developed to 25 years. I have successfully raised a girl through her adolescence, and she's now 28, and I'm going to tell you, at around 25, it was a miracle. It felt like a miracle to me happened. My daughter thanked me for everything I had done. My daughter cared about how I felt about things. My daughter engaged in a conversation where she actually wanted to hear my opinion on things. And it was a really interesting transition, and it made me believe everything I learned about the brain development. Your daughter's job now is to push you away as much as she can feel safely so that she can get on that airplane when she's 17 or 18 years old and be a freshman in college. So what that means is that you need to do some things. You need to take care of yourself, and this is actually a really great time to see a therapist or a parenting consultant. If you're struggling at all, I saw a therapist while my daughter was an adolescent, and that really helped me to not put it all on her. You need to reclaim more of your own life. This is a really hard transition in that your best job, your favorite job you've ever had, you are going to be laid off of. And so it is really important to put some things in your life that will fill you, that aren't just your kids. Get support, that was the therapy piece. And this goes to the young people too. Practice self-compassion. And what I mean by that is you're going to make 100 mistakes, both of you, the teenagers and the mothers. And you have to forgive yourself for those mistakes because there is quite a learning curve on this. And there is no manual. We're going to help you a little bit with some of the stuff we've learned, but you have to be really forgiving of yourself and your teenager or yourself and your mom. Okay.
I just want to throw out there that Terese's daughter went to my school, so probably that's why she's such an amazing adult. Probably, maybe, correlational data. So for the middle school girl, any of these points we could spend hours upon, and I don't want to do that, but to give you just a little sort of very high overview of what's going on in middle school. You are probably aware of some of the things that you can see. So friendships are changing, interests are changing as girls maybe go from elementary school to middle school. If they're going to private school or if they're in a new district, just the people around them are transitioning. She has more responsibilities at school and at home. So homework load is bigger. In middle school, you have a locker, you're changing classes instead of in the same classroom. You might have more chores at home. You've probably noticed that her ability to use nonverbal language is increasing. So things like or sarcasm, all of these things she's developing, yay. And she's practicing how to use those effectively, which is not always fun for parents. You are probably also aware that social media interest is increasing at this age, and 13 is when a lot of these sites you're actually allowed to start having profiles. And so for social media, that means there's more access to information, there's more connection to other people in the community or outside of your community, and also it's this funny thing of developing an online persona that might be different from the actual in-person persona. So this is probably what you're seeing. And also puberty, that. We don't need to say a whole lot about that because it was not a great time, I think, for many of us. But one really important thing to remember is that the brain is not necessarily developing at the same pace as the body. So if your daughter is very tall, or she already is developing a more curvy body, that doesn't mean her brain is also caught up as an adult brain. The two don't always match. So this is what you can kind of see actually going on. What you can't see, Terese mentioned a little bit already, that front part of her brain that controls all these really important things like reasoning and logic and planning. My 6th grade students at GMS know that part of the brain, I call it sad and mushy, because they're not good at, Shuya is laughing at me because she remembers, right? It's not developed yet, and so when your daughters don't follow through with a plan, or they seem like they have no ability to understand the logic of what you're saying, in many cases it's because they can't, and that's okay. Something happens at age 25, not only if you go to GMS, but just in general, where that kind of kicks in. Also, because girls are more aware of themselves and of other people, this is when their identity, they start looking at all these different aspects of themselves. Who am I in terms of my racial identity, my gender or sexual orientation identity? What is my family like? Who am I as a student or an athlete or an artist or a musician? Because they are more aware of other people, they're comparing themselves to those other people. This is kind of related to a term called being egocentric, and it's not this sort of negative connotation of you're very selfish and self-centered. It's actually a psychological state for adolescents where they truly, truly, truly believe the world revolves around them. And they grow out of it, most of them. Some adults are still egocentric. But at this age, most teenagers think that all attention is on them when they walk in the room. If they got a bad haircut, everyone's looking at it and everyone's talking about it. Or if they are on their period, everyone knows. That can't be true, that everyone is thinking about you at the same time. Just statistically, that doesn't work, right? Mathematically. But for middle school girls and high school even, that's what they're believing, and that's very stressful. And then the good news is this is also a time when abstract thinking becomes more advanced, and so as they're thinking about things like their identity and where they belong, they're also really able to start grasping concepts like fairness, equality, justice, right and wrong, and taking perspective, and like Terese said, learning from mistakes in order to build resilience. This is the perfect time. We always say at my school, if you get in trouble, it's okay, you're in middle school. This is the time to mess up. The consequences are lower stakes now. We want you to learn that if you make an error, you can recover from it, you can learn from it. We want you to grow from it, as opposed to just hide and never try anything for fear of failure. This goes hand in hand with this concept of growth mindset. Again, growth mindset, GMS, my school, GMS. It was just a coincidence, I swear.
It is a coincidence.
But growth mindset is this idea that you can improve your abilities. You're not just born good at something or bad at something. You can make those mistakes, learn from them, and get better. So put all of that in the brain, and then meanwhile your body's doing all kinds of things that are uncontrollable and sometimes embarrassing, and you think everyone's looking at you, and that's your middle school girl. As Dean of Students, that comes out in a lot of different ways. And for parents, I think you see it in a completely different way from me, so probably you know what I'm talking about. One big thing that I have learned from working with middle school girls, and that I try to share with parents, is that they don't really necessarily want you to fix their problems when they're venting or ranting. Sometimes they just want to say all the things they're feeling and thinking, and it's enough for you to say, wow, that sounds horrible, or that sounds really frustrating, or man, that seems like a really bad day you had. You don't need to jump in with, well, have you tried talking to that teacher, or what if you did this? even as an adult, if you think about when you complain to your friend about something and she jumps in with, well, why don't you do this? You're thinking, just empathize with me, just reflect back what I'm saying. And that really goes, same holds true for students, for teenagers. Another thing that parents and I talk a lot about is this idea of the balance of supporting your student and not supporting her too much. And it's almost the opposite of what Terese said, where some parents think, oh, she's in middle school now, or oh, she's in 8th grade, she can handle managing her homework on her own, or she needs to learn. Many students still need scaffolding. You can't just assume that once they're in middle school, they're going to be able to manage all these things. So it's okay as parents to still have a hand in helping them plan and organize and figure out things. Whether she lets you is another issue, but knowing that it's okay for you to still be there. I think giving yourself the permission to realize, yes, it's my job to be here to help. Excuse me while I flip this. You can see I was hiding my note cards, but there they are. So again, modeling all of these things that we want our daughters to do is so important, where if we are constantly on our phones and not paying attention, it's really hard to turn to your daughter and say, put your phone away while you're on your own phone. More broadly, if we are so afraid of making mistakes and not trying new things, then it doesn't set an example for her to say, oh, it's okay. I'm constantly telling my students that I'm not perfect, I screw up all the time, and it's okay. Do they still like me? Do they still respect me? Am I still doing my job well? And they realize, oh yeah, that time you emailed all the students instead of all the parents. Everything turned out okay. I still work there. I didn't get fired, right? And then when all else fails, and of course because I work in a school, I have to give this plug, we're your allies in helping your daughter grow up and discover herself. You know your daughter best. We know kids really well in general. And so putting those two things together, I think can help your daughter feel really safe in knowing that there's a team of people there to support her. So I might not know exactly what her favorite food is or how to comfort her that way, but I know that providing her food would be a good way to comfort her at the end of a hard day. And the sort of italicized mission statement or thesis statement there is that your daughter wants her independence, but she wants her mom when she needs her. My good friend has a 2-year-old who he showed me a really great video of her. She was mad at him, so she started stumbling away like little zombies, like 2-year-olds do. And then she got too far and turned around and realized how far away he was, and then stumbled back because she needed him. Now that's a 2-year-old, but that's actually kind of similar to middle schoolers. There's an analogy of if she's swimming in a pool, you're sort of the pool edge, and so she might be swimming on her own. She needs to take a break and come back and grab on the ledge, and that's you to hang on to you for a little bit, and then she'll push off and go on her own again. If you think about parenting your middle schooler that way, hopefully it'll help you kind of be okay with, she's pushed me off for now, but she's going to come back when she needs me, and you'll just be there for her when she does. And so Terese is going to jump in with what happens after all of this.
So some of the things are on a continuum and are very similar. But and actually 14 to 18 is a huge range. So if I were talking to you about your 14-year-old, it would be somewhat different than if I'm talking to you about your 18-year-old. But generally speaking, their friends are of utmost importance. So their social circle that does not include you are the most important people in their lives. But I think maybe the teenagers don't want to hear what I'm about to say. You really still are the most important person in her life. But she absolutely has to find other important people that she can talk to, that understand her, that give her support, because that is so much the preparation for being independent. She's going to have to say goodbye to you, so she needs to know that there are other people that she can count on. Pushing back on rules is absolutely normal. You're going to have to decide which rules you will let her push back on and which you won't. So the clue here is you need to let her push back on some rules, and you need to relent. That is a little bit like your peace offering. Okay, yeah, you've been so responsible, so yes, you can go to that party and you can stay there until, I'm just making this up right now. By the way, this is not a rule. 11 o'clock instead of 10 o'clock. But there still need to be parents at that party. So I still need to make the phone call or whatever. But I am going to let you stay out that extra hour that you want to stay out because you have been so responsible. So it is really important to figure out where you can fudge. You might not want to have a rule where she says, I want to go to this party, I want to stay till midnight, and there are no parents there, but I promise there won't be any alcohol. You may have a rule, this would be my rule, you can't go to that party if there are no parents there. You just can't. And when I would say that to my daughter, she would be furious with me. So you have to develop a very thick skin so that you know that fury will subside and everybody will still be okay. But she will be furious when she pushes back on the rules and you say no. She's preparing from the time she's a freshman in high school till the time she's a senior in high school to leave home. It's very specific to these times. This wasn't necessarily true when I was a teenager way back when. It's very specific to now. There is a lot of pressure on teens now to decide where they're going to go to college and to decide what they're going to be doing and to get the grades and take the AP courses. And this is a whole different training that I would actually really love to give about how you can push back against that as parents. But that is the reality of what your kids are experiencing in high school. So she's getting ready, and she's getting ready through all these myths she's hearing from her friends about how you get ready. And one of the things that she can benefit from is to sort of hear some things from you in that very gentle way that you're learning to do that are not myths. I have a story from my daughter that I want to share because it just meant so much to me. I thought my daughter wasn't listening to anything I said. She absolutely, anything that came out of my mouth was stupid, was old-fashioned, I didn't understand it. It was always that. And one day I said something to her and she said to me in tears, Mom, don't you know that everything you say to me means so much because you're my mother? And I thought, no, you've been telling me nothing I've said to you means anything. And it turns out that the things we've been saying all along, they remember. My 28-year-old and 30-year-old remember things I told them. So you just have to go on faith that it's important to keep telling them your values and telling them what's important, and it's going to get in there somehow. It's also important for them to push back and try to explore some other kinds of values. And then the thing that I said before, which is that prefrontal cortex. Actually, 16, 17, 18, you will experience your daughters as being able to think much more abstractly. And they will occasionally really be able to take in what you say and really hear it and actually interact with you. Younger teens, 14, 15, it's much harder. So that development really happens a lot more in junior and senior year. The problem with junior and senior year is they're so hard that your daughter is sort of struggling with everything in school. So it is hard for her to have a nice relationship with you now that she can have a nicer relationship with you. Thank you. Okay, so look, Tiffany, I said the same thing you said. Model resilience and growth mindset by being there to catch her. So even though my daughter and your daughter might push some of the limits and didn't do everything I told her to do, and in fact, outright disobeyed me sometimes, I needed to make it really clear to her that I was going to be there no matter what. Now, that doesn't mean that she came home from a party where there was alcohol and no parents, and I say, that's fine, honey. You know, I accept you for who you are. No, there was a consequence for that. But I waited till the next morning so that we could have a real discussion about it. And I made sure she understood what my rationale was, even if she didn't agree with my rationale at her 17 years old. I was there to catch her. And the swimming pool story comes from a really incredible book on girls' adolescent development called Untangled. So if you haven't seen that book, that's a great book to look at. And that is a great
It's on
analogy.
the last page of your handout.
Oh, good, excellent. I'm going to say the same thing, allowing her to make mistakes. She has to make lots of mistakes right now because you don't want her to make a mistake when she is away at school in, University of Georgia and you're not there. So this is the time to let her make her mistakes and come home and talk to you about what's going on. Developing good listening skills, that's for you. It is for the teens too, but they have so much going on. It's hard to ask them to really do that. So I think Jenna's gonna talk a little bit about what that means later. And my favorite thing, of course, which is get help if you need to. I think that when I went to my son's middle school for the 6th grade parent orientation when he was in 5th grade, the principal of the school got up and said, remember when your child was a 1st grader and they were 6 years old? Yes, everybody remembered that. And now they're 11 years old? Yes, everybody remembered that. Well, in that same amount of time, from now they're going to be driving. And that really hit me like, whoa, that's 5 years. And so I recommend that you cherish every moment you have right now and that you realize that some of what your daughter is doing to push you away is going to help you say goodbye to her. Because it's push-pull, and of course this is the person that you love the most among other people in the world, and it's a very short journey.
Okay, so I'm going to go over trends that I'm seeing working with high school girls in therapy. Most come to me very depressed or anxious and feeling overburdened. And so what's showing up for me is a very stressed out teenage girl that doesn't ever feel like they can shut off, because if they shut off, what will they miss? If they shut off, the people they're competing against for colleges are getting ahead. And it's these messages that I think a lot of times unconsciously we're giving to them about who are they competing with. Their friends are doing all these activities. You should be too. And you should be studying harder to get the better grades so you can get into the Ivy League school or whatever the goal is. But the girls that I'm seeing are extremely stressed out. They're worried about their peers and what their peers think of them, what their peers are doing, what they aren't doing. Should they be doing something else? A lot of questioning. There's a lot of substance use going on in the high schools right now. I'm sure it's not a surprise to all of you. And they're thinking like, should I try this? Should I go vape at break? Should I mean, there's just so many shoulds that they're doing around this. And it's at this experimental age where they're supposed to be trying these things out and figuring out what their values are, but there's so many temptations with substance use, sex, sexuality, like the hookup culture that's happening in schools and what that looks like, and the values as moms and what we want for our teenage daughters, and understanding that their values may be different, and how do we talk about that, and what does that look like on our family values and what you want to be teaching your young girls, and also knowing they need to be testing these things out and kind of figuring some of this out on their own. They also have grades in their future. A lot of the girls I see are extremely stressed out about what college am I going to go to? Will I be good enough? The fear of rejection or failure if I don't get into these schools. And so a lot of the work I'm doing with them is around just self-acceptance of who they are and where they're at, and that they don't have to be this perfect kid that's in a million activities and building this college resume, and figuring out what actually really matters to them and like the life's worth living to them instead of the life maybe their parents want them to live or other people, their schools telling them they should live, and figuring out what their goals and identity should look like or what they want it to look like, as like Terese pointed out, as they're getting ready to leave and figure that out on their own. A lot of the girls are perfection seeking, and I see this play out a lot with academics, but also in body image stuff. A lot of girls that I see have this budding eating disorders where they need to look perfect to get the attention from whoever they're attracted to say like, I'm the best girl, look at me, I'm skinny enough, I'm pretty enough, I'm worthy of your love or attention. And then parents the teens are really worried to let their parents actually know what's going on in their life. Because I hear a lot of times, they would never understand. They'll never get this. They'll never, like so many nevers that go with those statements. And so a lot of times they're just telling me, and then they're saying, and guess what? You can never tell them I told you this. And so it's a lot of negotiation around gently deciding, how can we let your parent come into this conversation? And it takes a while, but 90% of my teens get there. But it's actually trusting that the parents won't flip out hearing this information. And so a lot of times I have conversations with the parents alone to kind of say, like, your teen's about ready to tell you some big things and wants to share with you, but try to stay calm. This might be upsetting to hear this information, and give kind of some ways to respond so that the teen, when they do share, they can say, oh, actually, mom handled that pretty well. I thought she would flip out and she didn't. And then it opens this dialogue between you and your daughter about you are a safe person to go to. You don't have to just only tell your therapist this information. You know, I see you an hour a week. You can tell your parent most of this stuff. But on the other side of that, a lot of parents are actually afraid to know what's going on. And they don't want to know the full truth, because if I know the full truth, what am I going to do with this information? How am I going to handle what's next? And that's really scary. I'm a parent, and I'm like, oh gosh, how do I handle these things? But it is, I would say you are a lot stronger than you think you are in every parent that I've ever worked with. Even if you don't know, just say you don't know. Like, wow, this is really confusing to me, or like, I haven't dealt with this before. Can you tell me how you feel about it? Or can you walk me through what you would do or what you think about it? And just telling them, like, I don't know what to do. And usually most teens are really responsive to that, and that, oh, good, my mom doesn't know everything. She's not the know-it-all I say she is all the time. And it's more of a collaboration conversation. And then the last bullet point is the struggle for parents to give teens consequences and for the teen to accept consequences. It's a huge challenge I see, because a lot of times the kids I see have anxiety and depression, and some have suicidality risks. And a lot of times parents will tell me, well, what if I take this away? Will she get more anxious? Will she become more depressed? If I don't let her go here, things are going to get worse. And they're worried about like a mental down spiral. But on the contrary, I feel like you need to have predictable limits to set that they can expect. And it takes away the what if, because they know if they do this, then this is the consequence. There's no what if. And you can do it in a loving and assuring manner, but still set limits that keep them safe and know that you love them, you care about them, and you're not doing it to be the mean mom. You're doing it because you care about them and support them. Okay, so I have the next few slides are going to be tips on just kind of basic listening, and reflecting skills. So the first one is active listening. And I'm sure this isn't a new concept to people here, but it's very hard this day and age. I'm guilty of this myself. When your teen is talking to you, like, you know, they don't want to talk to you these days. They want to talk to their friends. So when they are talking to you, it is important to try to actively listen. And all of you are doing such a good job right now. By giving eye contact, you know, having the phone down, avoiding distractions. You know, so many times, like teens or our kids can come to us and you're in the middle of something and you're like, I want to get this done and before I, you know, attend to this. But it's really important to be able to put down your phone, stop your email, be like, okay, I have 10 minutes. Let's chat. Let's see what you want to talk about. And then having the body language, opening your body language instead of sitting like, what do you want? You can be like sitting and open. And give feedback when you hear what they're saying to you by asking questions or saying like, that's interesting. Can you tell me more? And just show them that you're listening by smiling, nodding, giving basic cues that you are paying attention to what they're saying. Because a lot of the times the girls come and tell me that they feel dismissed by their parents, that they're a burden. If I go to them and talk to them about this, they won't be able to handle it. They won't pay attention. They'll be occupied with my brother's game, or, you know, there's an endless list of why the teens are presenting that you don't care, even though we all know you do, that they want to think that you're the bad guy. So if you can practice the active listening, and then I like to use this even though it's very elementary, the basic reflective listening. So after they tell you something, it's great to summarize it because a lot of times what we are hearing and what they're saying is different, and there needs to be some clarity. So you can kind of combine any of these statements. So it sounds like you're feeling sad when I didn't let you go to the party, or, you know, just fill in the blank of whatever they're saying to you. And it's a good way for them to feel heard, and it's a good way to show that you're actually understanding what they're saying and feeling. I don't know if you can see this very well. But the last point is validation. And this is something I work with a lot with. So I do family therapy for our intensive outpatient program. And this is a piece that I work with on every family, is how to validate one another, for the teen to validate their parents and their parents to validate the teen. So validation is when you hear them say a feeling and you could think you don't agree with it. You don't understand where it's coming from. You're like, how would you feel that way? This is so confusing to me. And it's not conveying that you agree, but that you just hear them and you understand, okay, I hear that you feel upset about this. And you don't have to say, like, yeah, I would be too, but it's just like, I understand that's how you're feeling. And then you can encourage the dialogue to continue instead of, a lot of times, what happens with parents is like, you shouldn't feel that way. Why do you feel that way? And it's more dismissive. And this is just kind of validating. This is your emotional experience. I may have a different perspective, but I'm happy to like explore this more of why you feel this way about it. All right, setting limits and consequences. So this kind of goes with what Tiffany and Terese were talking about, is in the teen years, we have to stop putting rules on everything. And I like to have families pick like their top 5 and identify what your family values are, set expectations with your teen, and then make your rules from there. So what do you want these rules and consequences to be? And it's a conversation. Be open to feedback and like the rule negotiation with what the rules are and what the consequences are. And I think if you can develop clear, reasonable consequences together, when they mess up, because they will, because they're a teenager, you can just be firm, like this is the agreed upon consequence, and also be empathetic that I know this sucks. I know you don't want to do this, but I also don't want you to keep making this mistake, or it's important that we learn from this and move on. And then my favorite, natural consequences. This is the stage of life where we should be letting our teens and learn from life instead of from us all the time. And this takes away a lot of fighting. I mean, challenges between the mom and the teen. Again, you don't have to put rules around everything. And most teens that I see learn best from actually the consequences that society gives them rather than their parents. So I have an example on here. This is a problem I see a lot of the times with mothers and daughters about homework. And you need to be doing your homework. Have you done your homework yet? And I like to ask parents to just give the reminder and then let your kid take it from there. Like, they know they have their homework. Again, like Tiffany said, you can provide some of the scaffolding if they are having challenges with using an agenda or remembering what they need to do. You can help them out. But overall, I would give a reminder or have homework hours and then let them do it. If they don't do it, it's on them. It's their grade. And let them see how that feels. And this is probably sounding crazy to most parents in the room to be like, oh, let my kid just not do their homework. But most teens actually want to be doing well. And so let them slip up a few times, and maybe they don't get to, like this example is they're not doing their homework. You remind them of some consequences, and then maybe their grade slips and they don't get to play on their athletic team. You know, they have to sit out a game because their grades dip too much. And that's the consequence, like, oh, I need to be doing my homework so I can do what I enjoy after my after-school activity. And then supporting your daughter after they experience the natural consequence. So give a lot of empathy and understanding. Like, I can understand that you're upset and not being able to play soccer. Soccer is really important to you. Or please let me know if you need help with this in the future so you don't have to feel this disappointment again. And just kind of being there when life kind of kicks them down, but they will get back up. And this will teach them the lessons on how to be independent when they do go off to college and they aren't going to have their mom telling them to do their homework. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have a couple role plays.
I'm the middle school student.
No, I'm the middle school.
All right, Tiffany is going to be a middle school student. Terese is going to be a parent, and then I'm going to weigh in afterwards.
So I see this. I have dealt with this before on the other end. I am a middle school student. I decided to go on Instagram during class using a handle that is different from the one I told my mom I had. And I'm posting on my classmates' photos how ugly and fat and not cool she is, and curse. And so my teacher caught me, the vice principal called my mom, and now she's coming to pick me up from school.
Tiffany,
What?
you know I got a phone call, right?
I don't know.
Oh, I think you know. There are a couple of things wrong here. First of all, you were doing Instagram in the middle of school, and secondly, you have a handle you haven't told me about. No more Instagram, ever.
What? That is so unfair.
Well, too bad, you did it. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Boy, that was fun.
So Terese was showing us how not to handle the situation and how to shut down the conversation.
Yes.
But it's so easy to go there. Like, I do this as myself as a parent, like, what the heck? And that's
Exactly.
like your initial response because you're wanting to go in protection factor of your kid. But on the other hand, some suggestions on maybe how Terese can handle this different is being more open, like, what happened at school
Do
today?
we want to ask the audience?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we've
Sure.
got a
Get
suggestion.
some feedback. Okay, go.
You should talk to her, I think, like, introduce it a little bit slower than just putting all the bad news in, like, one week.
What a great idea.
Yeah,
So she said
Terese.
introduce it slower and don't put all the bad news in one big chunk, which is
Yeah.
a great idea.
That is a great idea.
Does anyone else have any ideas on how to handle this situation, or has anyone dealt with this situation with good tips?
I heard you had a really hard day at school today. What happened?
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great way to offer some validation,
Yeah.
empathy.
I did have a really hard day at school.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
She kind of went from like, she presented the situation and then there was a negative reaction, and then she burst out, she's like, you can never use it ever again, and that's like really negative. And so like if she was a little more positive, like either like doing like an Instagram detox or something like that, or saying let's take a break, or like let's delete this account or whatever, and then instead of like saying oh never again, never ever.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's such a great point because a lot of times we get guilty of speaking in absolutes, like never, always. I hear my teens talk about their parents that way all the time. They never let me do this. They always do this. And it's just not true. We're never working in that way of absolutes. So I like that idea of not taking it away forever, but just saying maybe you're not having it for a week. Maybe you're lost privileges to your phone for a while. Maybe you can't take your phone to school anymore and you won't use it at home. Would be maybe a more appropriate consequence.
You're so good at this.
I'm still going.
I have a question on how you address unkindness, because Instagram is bad, but unkindness, I think it's worse. And I don't know if validation of the bad bad day in school will validate unkindness. So this is, I think, more important than Instagram. Instagram, it's just you remove the phone for a week.
Right.
That's all. But what prompts the unkindness? Do they have psychologically something in the head that should, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that the validation is to acknowledge that it was a hard day. It isn't saying you didn't do anything wrong. It's just saying you had a hard day today. And then once your teenager has heard something like that, she is going to be a lot more open to hearing. I heard that you, from whoever called, the vice principal, I heard that you said some things that aren't very nice. If you come right at with, and I heard you had a bad day, and I heard you were really mean, she's going to shut down. And she's not going to learn anything.
And I think then you can also relate it into that conversation about your family values and like how we treat other people and how that's important as like a representation of our family and of what we stand for, and like this isn't okay. And then you can put a consequence around the unkindness, you know, whether it's you don't have Instagram for a while, you know, and maybe even asking questions like why did you do that? What made you say those things to this person?
How do you think it made them feel? What would it feel like if someone did that to you? I would also add that if mom sees me get in the car and I'm already hunched over and not willing to talk and snapping with, how was your day? Bad. Maybe that's not a good time to bring this up.
Exactly.
Even if she is very fired up and ready to go, maybe she's not in a good place to be talking about it because she's so upset too. So choosing the time to do this is also really crucial.
How would you address the second secret Instagram account, and how would you be able to manage the consequence of not having Instagram for a period of time, or Snapchat for that?
So this is a very interesting question because there's no right answer. Everybody in this room is going to have a different answer about that. But how I would address it would be to say, I know we set up your Instagram account together. Once things were calm, I would say this. I was really disappointed to find out that you opened another one with a different handle. And I would refer back to what we agreed. We agreed you would use Instagram, and we agreed you would use that handle. I need to be able to trust you in this for you to be able to have Instagram. So how do you think I can rebuild my trust with you? That's how I would handle it. And of course, any variety of words you would choose. When I used to work with parents who had little ones, who said to me, yeah, but if I spank them, it stops the behavior immediately. I would say, yes, it does. And what else does it teach them? So and I didn't say it like that. That sounded too judgy. But I wanted them to see that, yes, it stops the behavior and it closes down the child. doing good parenting is about taking the time to do it. And it's really okay to take a step back and know that, okay, we're going to talk about this tomorrow morning when we both calm down.
Even from a physical standpoint, for teenagers who think they're in trouble or are about to be in trouble, their body actually goes into fight or flight mode, which you might be familiar of, just being scared. And so their brain functioning is actually shutting down. They might actually not remember the thing that you're talking about. And they're not lying when they say, I don't know what you're talking about. The brain and the body are just in defensive mode. And so again, thinking about the timing of, I heard this happened, why don't we talk about it later? Seeing where they're at. Maybe they do want to spill right away, and then you can take your chance there. But knowing that right away might not always be the best time.
One other thing I would add to your question or comment is a lot of girls that I've worked with have set up their Instagram with their parents and then later found out their parents are logged in on their phone under their Instagram and they're monitoring it and reading all their DMs and like watching what they're doing. And so if that's happening, I would be like, wow, it seems like that you found out and I'm evading your privacy. I don't have that trust to begin with, and that's why you set up this other account, so you could have some privacy. And I think parents do it with good intention of being like, I just want to keep them safe. I want to make sure they're not talking to people they don't know or doing risky stuff on the internet. But it also gives the message to your teen, like, you don't fully trust them. You're giving them this opportunity to use the social media platform, but I need to monitor it. Like, you won't make good choices kind of messaging. And so a lot of times, this happens actually all the time. I would say this happens on a monthly basis with people I work with, that teens will find out that their parent is on their account or overlooking it. And so having that open conversation of taking some ownership and be like, I'm sorry I did that, or, I'm sorry we got to this situation, the parent taking some ownership of why they made that choice to be snooping on the Instagram from their own phone, and setting some limits around how to move forward about how they can trust each other, that you can have this app and I can trust that you'll use it responsibly.
Can you say, like, periodically, I want to check and see what's going on, and if you want to continue having this phone and this account, periodically you have to hand it over and let me look?
Yeah, I think as long as that's agreed upon in the beginning, that they know it's happening, it's not just you doing it randomly. Like, they know, I'm going to get this account, my mom's going to check it randomly. I think that's very fair, but it's like the agreed upon expectations of one another.
We purposely made this one really complex because it always is.
Yeah. Okay, next one.
Mom?
What?
There is a really important birthday party that I want to go to this weekend. So can I go? It's on Saturday night. And also there are just like a few girls that are allowed to spend the night. So can I also spend the night?
But you have soccer the next day.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll go to soccer.
But you have your APs on Monday.
Yeah.
Do you know how important your APs are? How important it is to do well?
Yeah.
Are you not thinking of your future right now?
I'm thinking about my future every day.
Please don't take that tone with me. Where are you going?
Okay, I won't go to the party. I'll just tell everybody that my mother is a
Don't be ridiculous.
is a witch.
All right, how many people run into this kind of situation with their daughters? I think every parent. Okay, so
it's
we'll
so
go to the
fun to
audience
do that.
first. How do you think Tiffany could have responded differently in this situation?
I think that she could just, maybe she could just go to the birthday party, but then, like, at nighttime, the mom could come and pick her up.
So she could go to the birthday party but not spend the night. It's a great idea.
You are going to be a great mother.
Anybody else?
I would ask, instead of saying, remember you have this and you have that, I would just say, how are you going to handle, or what are the time, when are you going to study for, like, let her decide and see if it is feasible or not in the schedule. You say you have 2 AP classes on Monday. When are you going to study? If you plan to do this, at what time are you? Like, go through the logistics of the times so that she figures it out. And that's that.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I would make, like this year, I had them write out a calendar because like one of them is working. So I'm like, okay, can you be realistic? Put down all the things you have and back into it, you know, how much time you have, and then validate the importance of friends, and then try to get them to see that, like she was saying, that, you know, maybe you could still go but not spend the night. And you'd be able to do these 8 million things you want to do tomorrow.
Developing like a compromise.
Yeah, I want to add to the giving the kid the agency. So I like to try to brainstorm, like, oh wow, how do you think you can study enough for your AP, and you know, how do you want to prioritize? So just kind of more brainstorm back and forth rather than telling.
Yes.
And maybe she has a plan already. I just didn't let her explain it to me.
Yeah.
You could have them take a practice AP test, and if the scores seem adequate for the real test, then you'd be like, okay, you seem like you're prepared. You can do like the cardio and like the soccer games. But if like the grades fall low, you can be like, hey, you can see that like you're not that well prepared yet for your AP test. Do you want to like do more studying, and then we can reevaluate if you think you have enough time to get to the party or not?
Great.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
How much, you know, like this scenario makes me think of something that happened to me, right? So, I mean, how much would you suggest sharing a story? Like, you know, I was in that same situation once, and I, you know, went out to a party, and I completely forgot about a commitment I had the following day. So, you know, I've had this experience, I want to share it with you because sometimes it's really hard to try to fit in everything, even though I know it seems like it's really fun, and if you miss it, it's going to be a big deal. But you know, I don't want this to happen to you. It happened to me, and it was horrible.
I actually love that idea because I think the key piece in this role play is that they're 17 years old.
Right.
They're getting ready to leave, and they need to be figuring this stuff out on their own. If they're going to college, they need to be learning about how to prioritize their time, and maybe they're not going out to the party every night, and like maybe they'll have some nights where they're doing homework or prioritizing big tests that are coming along. And I like that you would share your own experience because it shows, oh, I can actually relate to my mom. She's not this perfect person that always did everything right. And it gives this sense of connection in that you can share your experience and then say, but I want you to make this choice on what you think you should do. And giving kind of the idea of like, these are the natural consequences that will happen if you go to this party and you have soccer all day and you have your AP test coming up. This is what your choices are. You need to make the best decision. And it's kind of, again, if they choose to go to the party and sleep over, the natural consequence might be that they don't do that well of the test.
It's really hard to be a parent in this situation. It's really hard. The thing that Tiffany didn't say to me, that if I had been furious, I would have said, and I paid money for that AP test. And so I think that you have poured, and to me that illustrates, you have poured your heart and soul into helping your daughter be successful in whatever way your family has defined that and whatever way she's defined that. And this is her little bit of individuation where she's saying, maybe that thing isn't as important to me as it is to you, Mom. But it's hard. I just want to validate all the mothers in the room. Yeah.
I just want to say, I would probably try to think if there was a recent time in the last several years where they were overexhausted and there was a consequence, and maybe bring that up. I'm a big fan of my kids figuring it out or kind of thinking back on their own and maybe sometimes planting some of those seeds.
Yeah, I think it's like a gentle reminder of like, yeah, remember when you didn't get enough sleep and you missed this or you weren't prepared enough for this is a great idea.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? Okay, so I know we have our cards with questions for us about your families, your situations. So Christine, do you want to ask?
I've just been looking at the cards. Thank you for taking the time to write your thoughts. So a lot about communication, which I feel like you guys have narrated and illustrated. Here's one. A couple of these have talked about depression. I have 2 teen daughters. One of them has been experiencing anxiety and mild depression. I would love to be able to communicate better with my daughters and enjoy the mother-daughter relationship. And another one, also middle school daughter with anxiety and slight depression. Strategies to help her remain calm when she's stressed. Strategies to build her self-esteem and sense of self-worth, which we know is so important for girls.
Let me start.
Yes, I do.
So I would first, I guess whoever asks these questions, and you don't have to say who you are, but I would first say, like, are they getting help from a school counselor? Are they seeing a therapist? Because I think the first step is to figure out what's underlying the anxiety and depression. Like, what's causing those symptoms? Because it's really going to be hard to figure out strategies on how to help them if we don't know what's causing the symptoms.
Yeah, and I would say that kids that come to me at my school with anxiety and depression, it's going to be really hard for you as the mom to help them with strategies because there is that feeling of wanting to figure this out on their own. So if you have access to the school counselor at your school, call that person up and you can talk more about your individual situation. I talk to parents all the time. When it's back to school night, I tell parents I'm there for them as much as for their daughters. And so I really think that and I believe that most of the schools have counselors or counseling services now. And I do think that that is a general feeling, that we want to help the parents with whatever thing is coming up for their student.
Just to really echo outsourcing, if your daughter comes home with a calculus problem that you don't know how to do, you're not going to sit there and pretend you know how to do it with her. You might look into getting someone who knows how to do calculus. So in the same way, unless you are a trained therapist or a counselor, you don't have to feel like you're the expert and you know how to help her get better. We exist for you. We wouldn't have jobs if parents weren't coming to us. And so using your resources to supplement what you have as a parent is really important.
And I think in the middle school and high school age, a lot of times the girls feel too vulnerable to tell their mom actually what's going on, and they need to tell a stranger the first time. So whether it's a school counselor or someone that's not connected into their daily life because they don't want to make their parents feel shame or feel like they won't understand, it's a lot easier to tell a neutral party. And then that party can work on bringing you guys in and talking about it and how you work as a family.
We also have a few cards on challenges in the relationship with teen and daughter. Examples including, and some of you illustrated this, drama, fighting, yelling, how to communicate more effectively, rocky times with my daughter, wanting to find more ways to connect, techniques for conflict resolution. Having a 13-year-old, we have many parents here who are parents of kids who, girls who are 12, 13, have a 13-year-old daughter. It's very difficult. What drives a mother-daughter relationship and what causes conflict. Again, something useful to resolve conflict. Yeah, stress between teen daughter and mother. So, running theme, what will make it easier? Big question.
I just wrote something on the board that I do with every parent I work with around conflict. So this is a model in DBT that most of the time parents are coming in their logical mind, and most of the time teens are coming in their emotional mind. And this is always going to cause conflict because you're coming with reason and they're coming with emotion and it doesn't match. And so the goal is to use logic and reason and come to your wise mind before you have the conversation. So kind of like what Terese and Tiffany were talking about is finding the key moment when people can process their feelings and then calm down before they have their conversation is a great way to avoid conflict, where you can both be functioning in your wise mind. That will de-escalate situations. And a lot of times I have families develop like a code word where you notice if your teen's getting escalated and they notice if you're getting escalated and you're leaving your wise mind. And a lot of times we're leaving it into our emotional mind. And so a lot of the families I work with will use like a word they don't use in their everyday language. Like some of them say orangutan. And that's kind of like, whoa, step back, take a break. We're getting out to our emotional minds and we're getting angry. And we need to take a 5-minute break so we can come back to our wise mind and speak rationally to one another, and respectfully to one another, and actually figure out what's going on and regroup. That'd be my.
It's also okay to be having rocky times. I think that's kind of it's kind of the opposite of maybe what you want to hear, but if everything seems smooth sailing, that's kind of abnormal, right? It's okay to be in conflict and to not get along and feel like you're not listening to each other because of all these things we just talked about. And to try and force a smooth relationship all the time is sort of useless. So it's more when there are those calm moments, appreciating those, maybe even commenting on those, but not expecting that that's going to be the norm the whole time.
I need to give my plug for self-compassion again, because it's normal for when a teenager gets escalated, for mom to get escalated, or dad. This happens all the time, and you aren't always your best self, and she's not always her best self. So when it's over, when things have calmed a little, to be able to go back to your daughter as the adult and say, wow, I'm really sorry it went like that. Let's start over talking about this. And she may not be ready. She might say, I don't want to talk about it. And that means she's not ready. Okay, I see you're not ready. We do need to talk about it, but we'll talk about it at a later time. And I think that it is very powerful to say, I'm sorry it went like that. I'm sorry for my part in that. We both got upset. You both got upset because you both care so much about what the other person thinks and what's going on in the other person's life. You don't get upset with people when you don't care. So it's an important thing to remember. And then the other thing I want to say really quickly is that when my kids were at home, I started to mourn the loss of them when my oldest was about 15. I thought it ended at 18. I thought I'm sending them off and it's done and my best job I ever had is gone. But they come back as adults and you have relationships with them. And it is a different kind of relationship. So I had a very rocky relationship with my daughter. And I was very sad that we had days and weeks where we weren't getting along, thinking about, oh, this isn't how I want it to be. And now I have a great relationship with my adult daughter. So I want to leave you with that little piece, because I think that is the more common thing that happens from talking to my friends.
This next question is from one of our students, one of our youth. I would like to have a better relationship with my parent, and I hope to learn better ways to communicate with my mom.
That's so hopeful that that's what you want. I would start by just telling your mom that. Like, we've been really struggling with our communication these days. I wish it could be better. I wish we fought less. And kind of having that open conversation with your mom of, what's getting in the way? Why are we having all these conflicts? What is it about? And hopefully your mom will be able to hear that and not get defensive and push it back, like, because of you always doing these things. But it could be a real dialogue, and that would be, if that was your mom, I would be very excited that you would want to work towards that.
I think that that young person represents a lot of young people, because in my office at school, seeing 6th graders through 12th graders, I hear that a lot.
The same way we're encouraging you to use us for your daughters to use their other allies also. Whether you can talk to your other parent about how do I talk to mom, or talk to a teacher or another adult you trust. I actually went to my older brother for advice on how to talk to our mom, and he had some boy tips, which were not as applicable, but still worth thinking about. Sort of one of the main messages is that you're not alone, whether you're the daughter or the mother. Lots of other mothers and daughters are feeling the exact same way, and if you reach out, you will find support and often advice on how to experience whatever it is you're experiencing.
Okay. Let's see. What do girls want from their mothers?
Do any girls want to answer that? We don't want to put you on the
This one?
spot, but it would be great if you did.
There's one back
Yeah.
Ice cream.
So I'm going to interpret that a little bit differently. I want to have fun. I want to have humor. I don't want it to always be heavy.
I don't always want to eat the healthy food every day.
Oh, yes, and I
the
want
snacks.
ice cream. I forgot to say that part. Yeah.
I guess the thing I value most from my mom is her support.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think most teens want to know that they're supported unconditionally, even when they screw up. And knowing that you are their safe place in those scary times, because middle school and high school is really scary, and there's a lot of choices and a lot of unknown, and you're just kind of guessing at how you're gonna identify, who you're gonna identify with. And so to have that secure relationship with your mom is really important.
My daughter just said, I want you to leave me alone and stay out of my business.
Yeah, because 12-year-old often tells me nowadays, to give her space.
Yep.
And she'll come to you when she wants to say something.
Yeah.
Now, that isn't necessarily what we want to hear, because we want to be having a relationship all the time with our daughters.
Yeah, that's the opposite of what we want to hear.
Right. But that's what they want, and that's okay.
Yeah. It's so to validate you, it is so hard to step back. Yeah, taking that step back is the hardest part,
Yes,
because
it
it's
is.
a feeling of loss of control. We're controlling pretty much the first
We
10
are.
plus years of our kids' lives, of where they're at, what they're doing, and to kind of let go of some of that control is really scary, because you're like, can I trust that they'll do this? Do they have this? And they'll show you pretty quickly. And if they don't, just step back up. Be like, well, actually, we've had a few mistakes lately in this area. I think you need some more support. But if they're doing well, reward them and take one more step back and say, could you take this on?
If you go back to the swimming pool metaphor, not only are they letting go of the edge, sometimes they're kicking off of the edge. So it's not to have yourself be prepared for not just they're disengaging, but they're actively pushing you away, and that's normal too, because they'll come back.
Yes.
Yeah. You have some hands up
Yeah.
there. Go ahead.
But when you do step back, doesn't that create distance? So then how do you maintain the relationship with distance?
That's a really great question. If your child wants you to step back, they need that distance right there. That doesn't mean you're going to step back and not come in a little bit here and there. So you can create your relationship in ways where you see some openings. But I think the important thing to know is that in the long run, You've had this kid for a long time developing this relationship. That's going to be remembered. So when this part's over, that's the part they come back to.
And a lot of times with families, when the teens are doing this and it's really scary for the parents and they're like, I'm not ready for this and they're not ready for this, and they're worried about that, losing the closeness in the relationship. One thing I ask them to do, and this is hard because people aren't always eating dinner together every night, but the nights that they are, having the families do like the daily rant, where everyone shares something about their day. It can be positive, negative, but everyone gets to rant at the dinner table about something, and it kind of maintains that feeling of connectedness and like family sharing. We actually know something that's going on in one another's lives, and it doesn't feel like a lot to parents, but it's something you can hold on to and be predictable every day.
Yep.
That distance doesn't have to have a wall in it. You have the distance, but she can look back. If she can still see you, she can still come back to you. And it's like Terese said, it's good to have that because eventually they're actually going to have walls and a lot more distance.
I just make a comment on that, like she's 13 and she just
And she really wants you to be talking to her right now.
I know, not right about now. When you're saying, you know, when they're asking to push back and also create that distance, I get that, but I also leave her notes in her school book because she's working so hard, and just it's a comment of, you know, you got this or whatever, or in her lunchbox. But now she does it to me. I got a note that just had, you know, cup of coffee. Cup of coffee. So it goes both ways, and I'm still giving her distance. But I know that from way before, you know, in elementary and leaving notes, that even her friend came and stayed with us. So in their lunch, I put a note, and the mom called me, "What kind of lunch are you making over there?" Casey told me she wants lunch like, you know, Leah's mom does, and it's the note that I put in there. So, you know.
That is such great advice.
Yeah. Giving distance, but being their cheerleader.
Sorry your mom had to embarrass you to tell us this.
You can write her a note about it tomorrow.
I'll get a note about it.
Yeah.
I can't help myself. I want to comment about what you were saying because it's really hard and you want to give the distance, but you want to know they're there. So if we're fighting, you know, if it's like during the week, I might just wait till we're a little calm, and then I'll say, you know, if you feel like it, maybe we could think about going shopping sometime. And just trying to build in something we both like to do that is a long enough chunk of time that little bits and pieces come out. And also the ice cream comment, the Krispy Kreme for dinner actually did work.
Great.
You had a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the distance they want is from you parenting, giving advice, correcting, but not necessarily things like that, like going to watching a movie together or doing other things that are not necessarily mothering, directing, teaching. I think that's the distance I get.
So sometimes though, just so that I can speak to some of the other people in the room who might have this experience, sometimes it feels brutal. Sometimes it feels like it's everything. And it is going to end.
Yeah. My parents were the worst people in the world when I was young. Now we're really close.
Yeah.
I went to a talk, it might have even been through CHC, about moms and boys, and they were talking about how to get your boy to open up to you, and it was not face-to-face conversation.
Right.
Side to side.
When you're driving.
In the car, or shooting hoops, even when they're really little, you know, you're going in and you're lying down with them before they fall asleep at night and talking, and all this stuff comes out. Do you find with girls that works as well? Girls are more open to the face-to-face conversation, or?
Being the carpool mom, is one of the very best ways to hear about what's going on. Yeah.
Because they don't tell you,
No.
they're talking to each other and you're picking it up. Yeah.
Sorry, girls.
But I think girls are different in that way. Like, I think depending on the stage they're in. So I think there's definitely the side-by-side stage and kind of end of middle school, early high school. But I think they also want to be seen and heard, and they need that face-to-face.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for the whole social media phenomenon that's going on and how to, that is our probably single biggest argument with all of my kids, and just trying to explain about what we're learning about how the phones affect you and trying to come up with reasonable limits that everyone is happy with and trying to follow through on it. And maybe perspective you know about how teens feel about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I work very closely with a group called My Digital Tattoo, and we just had an event in the fall with Common Sense Media as well. And, you know, social media is neither good nor bad. It's like conflict. Like, I mean, I teach SEL to kids, and so we talk about, you know, if, you know, social media, I mean, anything technology or social media is going to amplify what's already there. So if the issue is there or they're acting in a certain way, it just amplifies what's already there. And so it's a different way to think about it versus, you know, and so it's not seen as threatening. And I think that if you, Common Sense has some guidelines. I'm sure some of you guys know about them. They have some pretty reasonable guidelines that are developmentally appropriate. And that's the piece that I think is really important to also follow is the developmental piece. Because I feel that what's also happening on media, it's also a community, right? It's also their social media. Right. I mean, this is where their friends are. And some of the conversations I've heard for kids sometimes who are not finding their community of peers or friends in the real world are then going sometimes on social media platforms to find those friends too. And some of it can be productive and some of it may not be so much. So, but I do, it is a good, I think, practice in, you know, looking how they make decisions, independence. But again, I think it just has to be monitored and supervised in a respectful way, you know, and with agreements. Agreements are really important.
I think it's My Digital Tattoo. They have a technology family plan that you can, it's a worksheet that you can download, and it has developmentally appropriate guidelines for the age range that you're looking at, and so it will actually suggest to you, here are 3 options for your family, which one makes the most sense, and you talk about it with your kid and decide together, this is what we're going to do. And so having something like a contract, we do contracts in school all the time of behavior contracts or how we treat each other, and I think letting your daughter feel like she has a say in it and she can live up to it is a way to help her feel like, oh, I'm taking ownership over my decisions with this, rather than you just coming in and saying, screen time for 30 minutes or something like that.
One last thing I'll add, and then I think we need to wrap up, is that most of the teens that are coming to see me have an anxiety or depression diagnosis. And a lot of time what's underlying that is a lack of sleep, and that their sleep is not regulated and they're not getting enough. And for the teen years, 8 to 10 hours is what's recommended every night. And with the demands of school and a social life and AP classes and, you know, catching up to the person next to you that you're competing with for a slot in certain colleges, there's not time for the kids to get that much sleep. And how to prioritize that, because most of my teens are in their room at night talking to their friends, and because they need friend time. You need downtime, and that they don't have access to that downtime because they're overscheduled, and they are only getting that downtime in the wee hours of the night when they should be sleeping. And then the lack of sleep is compounding this anxiety and depression. And so with my clients, I have them agree to a bedtime And most teens hate that, and they're like, Jenna, are you for real? But we set a bedtime together, they agree, and then I make them be off their screens 30 minutes prior to the bedtime, just because of like everything we know about blue light and how it impacts the brain and the melatonin being released, and that's impairing their sleep. So I would suggest saying charging your phones in a common space, not in your room, and 30 minutes before you go to bed, that needs to be plugged in. And it kind of stinks for the parent because a lot of times in the beginning they are not self-regulating, so you're going to have to stay up until that bedtime as well. And thank you all very much.
Thank you.